Yep, that's Jonathan Gibbs in the house. If you guys want to talk leadership, goal setting, maybe a little crypto, be back in 60 seconds. Let's go.
We are live. Bruce Buffer here, and we're being broadcast around the world. Thanks everyone for joining us on the Solar Objections live action role play. I have the pleasure to introduce a big UFC fan, fellow poker player, Solar Pro, and my friend, Solar Joe.
Let's go. We are back on another episode, another week on the Solar Objections live stream. And it's bittersweet. This is the last episode of the season. I'm taking a break from it, but I had to get my next guest on before that happened. Jonathan Gibbs is one of my early mentors, and this guy is a visionary, inspiration, motivational speaker, and author. Trainer, creator, dreamer. I would say sales ninja and assassin is a great way to call him too. But like I said, he's one of my mentors. I learned so much from him, and he's doing us the honor getting on here and helping us out with a little training on leadership, goal setting, and maybe a little crypto. So Jonathan Gibbs, thank you so much for being here, man.
Hey, yeah, you bet. Well, I'm here for you, Joe, because I enjoyed our time together as well. And it was only a couple of years ago, we were driving around in your car together, running some appointments in Northern California. And we probably spent maybe 10% of our time talking about solar and 90% of time talking about life. And so it was an easy yes for me. So always enjoy spending time with you.
Thank you so much. I know it's been a few months for you to even do anything like this at all. And so for you to do this is really, really appreciative. And everybody watching, be appreciative too. Get in the comments, say what's up to Jonathan, ask a question. He's going to be doing a little, quick training on leadership and goal setting. So it's going to be interactive, engage, respond, put your questions in there. That's going to get the most out of this. And like always, if you guys want your name shown, go to the bottom of the post, click on the StreamYards link, and give us permission to show your name, or it'll just say Facebook user, and we won't know who we're talking to. All right. So Jonathan, all right. So it's okay. We get into a little bit of training, talk about a little bit about leadership and what you can kind of help our audience with a little understanding of what you do and how you work your game.
Yeah. Well, for those that know me, I like to prepare. We're not going to get a polished presentation today. What you're going to get is kind of a behind the scenes look at a work in progress. And so this is not the after picture in a before and after sequence of somebody doing a great job on their body or car or home. I spent the last 10 years in solar trying to accomplish something. Part of me feels like I did that. Part of me feels like I almost did that. So the last 4 months has really just been a lot of self-reflection on of those events and really just what I want the rest of my life to look like. And so if the end of the year is a special time for you and it's a time where you're putting a little extra thought into what you want your life to look like, how you're defining things like success and goals, I'm hoping that me sharing some things transparently with you brings value to you at this point in time and in your marriages and your businesses and relationships. And so this isn't fully baked. You're going to get, these are some things that I've been journaling about. I've been talking to my mentors about and really just studying. So with that, I guess I'm ready to get started with maybe 10 or 15 minutes of notes, Joe, and then we can open up for questions if that works for you.
Perfect. Let's go. So talk to us. How to define leadership?
All right. Well, as we learn and grow, we become better, right? And so I'm looking at what happened with smart energy today, and I'm looking from that standpoint of, okay, it took me 9 years to build that company with partners and a lot of other talented people. But the learning curve we went through over the last few years, I feel like, okay, I could redo that in 9 months if I wanted to do that. And that's what a good learning experience should result, right? A learning experience should help us do things bigger, faster, stronger. And those are good learning experiences. The learning experiences I'm sort of seeking out for myself today, I'll kind of conclude with it, but they're quite a bit different than the learning experiences I've been seeking out for most of my life. Sitting here at 44, wondering, what do I want the second half of my life to look like? Do I want to take everything I've learned and do the same things in the second half of my life, just bigger, faster, stronger, and maybe for more money? That's definitely how we can define success. Or do I want to do something completely different? Do I want to take the things I've learned and do I want to change everything? And that's kind of where I'm leading. And when in going down this road, I'm starting with really simple questions, which is, how am I going to define success next year for me? Right? I've been doing the same thing for 10 years, working with some of my closest friends and people I love and care about, and I won't be doing that next year. So how do I want to define success for my life? How do I want to define wealth? How do I want to define leadership? I'll share with you some other things I'm looking to redefine. And so reverse engineering that question got me to ask the question, where did my definition of success come from? Am I using a definition of success that I took from somebody else? Am I using a definition of success that I took from a 20-year-old Jonathan or a 30-year-old Jonathan? Where did this come from? Did I copy someone else's definition of success? And look, that's not a bad way to do it. Emulation and duplication is not a bad way to get started. But for those of you that have been running your own companies and running your own businesses or running your own teams for a while, where did you get your definition of success? Where did you get your definition of leadership? Is it from an older version of you? Is it from a different person? These are some of the questions I'm asking myself. So the last 4 months for me have really been an intentional exercise to intentionally redefine these things through the lens of everything I've experienced in life and everything I've learned, including the success and the failure. So I want to take a concept. I want to give some examples. I learn really good through examples and analogies. So my intention here is not to placate anybody, but to actually use some really simple examples that we can kind of all understand, and then we can get into something a little meatier. So let's take the idea of love. Our definition of love changes throughout our entire life, and the more experience we have with love, the more exposure we have to different kinds of love, the more we redefine what love is. As a child or an infant, love is basically getting what we want when we want it, right? An infant or small child is going to cry when they want to be held, fed, changed, sung to, rocked to, provided for. And if you don't give them what they internalize as what they want, right, they're going to make a bigger and bigger fuss. And when you do give it to them, they're going to interpret that as love. Many of us have literally said to our mom or our dad, "I hate you," when they don't give us the third cupcake. My
7-year-old did that this morning, actually.
I hate you, Dad. Right? Now, as we grow, in our experience of giving and receiving love, and as we grow in relationships, we began, sometimes I remember going to college and writing a letter to my mom at 18 and realizing in that moment a different level of love, realizing that everything she had done was really a sacrifice to get me on that plane in that moment of time. And love began to change for me. I began to define love as something different. In fact, most teenagers can admit that parents not giving them everything they want when they want it is actually love. And so the definition can change between when we're 3 years old to when we're 13 or 14-year-old and can become completely different. Think about that. The definition of love can become exactly opposite to us through our growing and understanding, and it can continue to evolve for the rest of our lives. Right. About 10 years ago, I was so interested in this concept. I started studying love everywhere I could, in psychology, in religion, in relationships, even in pets. Right. And I discovered that there was, in fact, the highest possible definition of love. And the highest possible definition of love actually came from the Greeks, and it was called agape love. And what's really interesting about the highest form of love is it has nothing to do with the person who's receiving it. It's 100% based on the giver. So any one of us can give agape love. We can give the highest form of love. It's unconditional love. It means I love Joe. I love Joe independent of anything he does for me. It's not conditional that Joe does the things I want him to do. It's not conditional on Joe loving me back. It's not conditional on Joe performing a certain way or making sure he doesn't hurt me. That it's my right as the giver to give somebody the highest form of love, which is unconditional love. And I took that definition of love and I began to, using that new definition years ago, I began to redefine everything through that definition. And it opened me up to meet the person who is my wife today, Hannah Gibbs. And I can say that, I know and understand a love today that I have never known my whole life. And it comes from, I think, first redefining what love can be and exploring that concept. So let's take this into business. Right? Because I know that's why some of us are here. I was skipping through some of my notes here. Let's take the same concept of love and let's just apply that same thinking to leadership. Right? What does leadership mean to you? So I know we've got some people in here. I don't know. I've never used this platform before, so I'm sure Joe can help me. If I'd love to hear from some people who are on the line. What is your definition of leadership? You can share it with a short description. You can share it with a person. You can say, I think this person embodies my definition of leadership. You can share it with a word. You could share it by saying courageous or servant or whatever you think leadership is. I'd love to hear from people like, how would you define leadership?
Go put it in the comments. If you're watching, listening right now, go ahead, put it what your definition of leadership is. If it's a person, it's a sentence, it's a word, go ahead, put it on there so we can let Jonathan see that.
All right. So we'll just keep going as people are sharing us on our text messages or on this group what leadership means to you.
Yep.
All right. I love it.
Got a couple coming in here.
I don't have your name, but empathy, that would be really high in my definition. Skylar Dreyer, influence, I love it. Continue to share because we'll come back there. If other people want to share, you're not going to be too late. All right. So I'm just going to be just as real with everybody as I can. When I was in high school, when I was in college, and even starting businesses afterwards, I sought out positions of leadership for what they could mean for me. I wanted to be the leader in my study group. I wanted to be the director of my play. I wanted to be the captain of the football team. Reflecting on why and what was motivating me to seek those roles out is I wanted to be in that role because what that role meant to me as the leader. And this isn't about right or wrong or better or worse. I'm just sharing with you my experience, okay? Right? I liked what other people thought about me as the leader. I liked having direct access to other leaders, right? As the captain of the football team, the coach would talk to me and I would talk to my team. I liked being the go-between, right? Even during the game, I liked that the coach would signal the play to me and I would tell everybody else what the play was, right? I liked what that position of leadership said about me. I liked how it felt. I liked how it made me feel. Right? I liked how it made other people feel about me. I wanted to be a leader because of what it meant for me and to me. Again, this is not about right or wrong. This is about how we choose to define what leadership is. If you want to be a leader at your company or your sales team, your ops team, your family, your basketball team, your church, how are you going to define leadership? Probably more today than any moment in all of human history, we get to define things for ourselves. We get to define roles, responsibility, definitions. We have more control over our lives today than ever before. There is no longer one way of doing things, one way of being successful, one way of winning. So what I would invite you to consider as we move into 2022 is to take a look at your definitions of success, leadership, success, wealth, family, community, and realize, like, is there a way that you, your family, your business partners, is there a way that you could redefine these terms in a way that benefits the group? Being the leader or CEO of a business like Lumio, I would often learn things first that I could share with other people, right? This is a leadership concept that is not a new one. Sometimes these things were positive, sometimes they were negative. I would get value out of telling my partners or my VPs information they didn't know, right? It feels good to tell people things that they don't know. As I had the opportunity to do this at higher and higher levels, I began to learn different things. As an employee, they might not have the same control over their situation that I have as an owner, co-owner, or CEO. So if I'm sharing with them something that's negative, that could impact their job, their income, their family, where they live, and they can't do anything about it, I'm not actually sharing a benefit of new information. I'm sharing a burden. In the long run, this ends up putting a very heavy burden on that person and even their family if they share the news that I shared with them on their family, right? Because they're unable to impact it much of the time. Leaders can feel better because they're not alone. They've shared the information, but ultimately what they've done is hindered their team. They've created an emotional obstacle in addition to all the other obstacles for this person doing their job. Today, I define leadership as a very lonely position where you actually have to keep a lot of things to yourself. It's a completely different definition than what I used to have even a few years ago. I've been in technology for 20 years. I've been in solar for 10 years. Some of you know I've been trying to close this transaction for 4 years. That is now finally closed. My goal for a long time, my vision statement for a very long time, since 2018, was to use technology and financial instruments to create the largest home improvement company on the planet. That was my vision statement. 18 months ago, I changed that vision statement to, I want to build the team who builds the largest home improvement company on the planet. I redefined my role as CEO and it wasn't really even CEO. I kind of ended up being that as a default for a while. To instead of doing it, to the person who helps other people do it. Because my vision statement had changed, my mission statement needed to change. How am I going to build the team who builds the largest home improvement company on the planet? How am I going to do that? Greg Butterfield says your mission, your vision statement or your mission statement should be something that you can put on your tombstone. And so in December, a year ago, I created my vision statement for my team. And my vision statement was lift my team, serve my team, love my team. So now the CEO role changed from the person who was getting all the credit, who was building the largest home improvement company on the planet, to my role now was redefined as a facilitator, a helper, a servant, where my goal now was to lift other people into a position of influence, responsibility, limelight. My mission was to serve others in their role inside of a longer organization. And I wanted to include love. All for studying love for 10 years. For me, so much of who I am comes from sort of Christian principles I grew up with. And there's a verse in the Bible that says basically anything that's done well, that's done without love, is meaningless. And so I wanted there to be meaning in my relationships, in my actions, that was long lasting. And I could control that meaning by doing these things through agape love, because agape love was not conditional on the receiver. It was only conditional on the giver. So in that way, it made me feel like I had a lot of control and influence to creating the outcome. If my outcome was, I wanted to create an environment that people feel loved. You see, every company loves their performers. I have loved my performers for years. And every year, at the end of the year, I give all my top performers a lot of praise, recognition, rewards, and even money. But when Greg and I were putting together this company, we would dream and we say, wouldn't it be great if we just had a culture of love where people felt loved in their job, regardless of how big their contribution was? And this is how we started sort of defining the environment that we wanted to create, because as a leader, it's top down. So the definitions that you create, your teams will adapt. The intentions that you determine, your employees will ultimately feel. And so this is how I started redefining leadership in my life. I started redefining my leadership actually as a very lonely position that helped others first and that actually ate last. In fact, Greg Butterfield recommended a great book for all of us to read called Leaders Eat Last. Again, this is not right or wrong or what I did versus what other people do, but it's to show you the power that you have as a leader in your organization or on your team. And you don't have to be the CEO of your company to make a huge difference. The number one reason why people leave companies is people leave bad managers. So you could be a manager that's only leading a team of 5, but you are literally the difference as if those people stay there or not. That's how much power and influence you have over your team. So changing one definition of a core principle in my life ended up changing my entire life. Instead of relying on a definition of leadership that the 18-year-old Jonathan, the 24-year-old Jonathan, or even the 30-year-old Jonathan had pursued his whole life, instead of adapting someone else's version of leadership, because there's a lot of ways to win. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they're different human beings than me. They're different leaders than me, right? And you don't have to define leadership like your manager defines leadership, like your last boss defined leadership, like the CEO of the last company that you worked defined leadership. This is your opportunity. How we choose to define these core principles in our life will end up defining our lives. So as you can see, the surprise, right? I started in love, and it's not a coincidence because I wanted love to be a part of my leadership definition, right? I took something that I had studied for a long time and I wanted it to be a part of it. Now, every CEO and company loves the people who perform. We wanted to create an environment that made everybody feel loved, regardless of their contributions. Some of these things may sound really easy. They sound really simple. Here, we're covering them in 15 minutes. They're really hard. They're really hard for me because it also goes against other areas of my nature, right? There's an area of me that wants the recognition, right? There's an area of me that wants the limelight, right? There's an area of me that wants to look after myself in business and that wants to live under even the old definition of leadership, right? But through my own experiences, through my own learning that gained understanding, I made a deliberate decision of, you know what? I want to live under the new definition more than I want to live under the old definition. And so defining that structure, writing it down, enrolling those, and then goal setting is the same things, right? So writing it down, speaking it out, enrolling accountability in others, right? That's how we walk that out. Right. And so for those of you that are tempted to adopt this in 2022, let me get you a stern warning. The concept of leadership and love that I'm personally trying to lean towards in the second half of my life has little to no fairness in it, has little to no personal benefit in it, has little to no credit in it, and is actually very hard on a daily basis because it actually goes against what a lot of the world is teaching. But for me, in going through some of my successes and failures, while it's been a hard transition, personally, it's been extremely rewarding. And so while I haven't accomplished everything I set out to accomplish, the way I accomplished it is something I'm just eternally proud over. And so, most of my life, a lot of my mentors would tell me things like, Jonathan, you got to figure out how to enjoy the journey. It's all journey. You live your life inside of the dash. There's poems and quotes that talk about all of this. And when people would tell me, you got to enjoy the journey, I said, that's spoken by someone who's never accomplished anything great. It's all about the goal. And, today I realize it's how we do things and not what we do that really has the most impact on ourselves and the people around us. So this is the type of learning I'm seeking today. I used to get on Zooms or go to conventions or read books, and I would almost skim, right? Even doing ride-alongs with other people, it's always been my nature to just try to find that one thing, right? Get on that call, go to that training, find that one thing that I can use right away, right? That hack, that shortcut, that secret, right? What's the one thing I can take away from this that I can apply to everything I'm already doing? And where sort of my learning is going from is I'm not looking for that one thing anymore that makes everything else I'm already doing better. I'm looking for that one thing today that changes everything. I'm looking forward to learn those concepts and those principles, those understandings that are so paramount to our existence as human beings that they change everything. That they don't make us want to add the room onto the house. They make us want to strip the house down to the studs and build a brand new house. That the before and after, you can't even tell that it's the same house. It's not that we did a really good job with the old house we've been living in for 30 years. It's that we built something completely brand new and different. That's the learning that I'm seeking. That's where I'm at. in my transition and what I'm looking for, because I think that's the evolution of learning and understanding. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, the Louis Vuitton family, the Porsche family, they are some of the wealthiest families in the world, and they aren't really interested in Earth anymore. They have knowledge and understanding of space. There are single asteroids in space that are worth more than 10 times all the wealth on Earth combined. And so they realized that instead of competing for being one of the wealthiest people on Earth, if they could learn how to mine asteroids, they will be worth more than everybody on Earth combined. So they are no longer interested in Earth. Right? Once you understand that there are different levels to this, you sort of lose interest in some of the things that were defining you earlier on in your life. And while I don't have any intentions of exploring space, Joe asked me, like, what have I been doing with a lot of my time? I've been exploring heavenly concepts a lot in the last 4 months, just taking inventory of, like, how did I get here? How did I, where did these drivers come from? Where did these definitions come from? Where, in order to know and have a good direction on where you want to go in the future, it's really good to understand where we've been. So I'm just kind of skip ahead here. So here are some things that I'm working through with my beautiful wife, Hannah, and our kids and our family. Here are some of the things that we're working on defining together. We're working on defining what leadership is and other roles. So instead of putting up chore lists in our house for our kids, we're asking our kids to define roles. How would you like to participate in the family? What do you want your role to be? And then when the child chooses the role, then the tasks become obvious because of the role they're choosing to take on versus us inspecting that they're doing the same chores every day or every week. Success, family, community, redefining what wealth is. My 21-year-old daughter is living with us, and her 5-year boyfriend just gave her a promise ring for Christmas. And I consider it great wealth to be able to live with this young man for a year or two and to be able to mentor him in how to love my daughter, right? The opportunity that as a potential father-in-law that I could actually help raise the man who ultimately ends up loving my daughter is I'm cherishing that beyond any dollar amount I could go create. So hopefully, these things, for those that are watching this on record or watching it live with us. And I would just encourage you to, take the next 8 or 9 days and, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family. And a great way to prepare yourself for next year is before setting goals. Maybe you want to define what some of these things actually mean to you, not based on when you set out. Maybe you set out to do something 5 years ago or 8 years ago. You know what? It's okay to change your mind. Your values might have changed. Your relationships might have changed. Your desired outcome can change. Like, that's okay. Starting and defining these core concepts and then setting your goals inside of a new definition, might be a tremendous experience for you. So we can field some questions now if you want, Joe.
I absolutely love that, Jonathan. That was amazing, man. You definitely blew my mind. That's something I'm going to take. I'm going to watch this again afterwards, just to let you know, and really have that sink in. So I really appreciate you. Any final thoughts on goal setting? Is it kind of the same concept? You mentioned that part of is first define those roles, but do you kind of start over every year? Do you build off every year? How do you feel like start your new goals for the new year to make it so cliche?
So I think why defining something like defining success, like how do you and your spouse want to actually define success in 2022, I think is really important. And then from there, inside of that new definition of success, setting goals is really important. So I'm a big advocate of setting goals. I set SMART goals. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, time-stamped. So there's an acronym for SMART goals. You can Google that. I think that's a great structure for setting goals. A lot of people will set a goal and then they will work until they're done versus work until the goal is achieved. So if you want to be serious about setting goals, I believe in setting non-negotiable goals, reverse engineering those goals into daily actions, and then, not stopping each day until those days are done. It's no secret putting together Lumio that I was working 110 hours a week for at least the last year and a half. Once the team was being built and contributing, I could work a lot less. But for the first year plus, when we couldn't afford a big team and we couldn't afford a Greg Butterfield and some of these other things, like the work had to get done. And so, pick a goal, reverse engineer that goal into daily steps, decide as a family unit, if you're going to be working, 3 hours a week, 5 hours a week, 6 hours, 3 days a week, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, then reverse engineer it, break them down into daily activity. Most success is achieved during the mundane. Right? Like you don't get better on game day. You do not get better. You rarely get better, pitching solar, closing, doing the work. You get better when you're practicing, when you're researching, when you're teaching. You get better teaching. So SMART goals are, if you Google SMART goals, that's a good acronym. It's a great structure for goal setting if you take it seriously.
Awesome. I really appreciate you there, man. So I want to get some questions in. I know I don't have all night with you, so I want to get some questions in. And we got some comments coming in real quick. So if you want to finish, Jonathan,
let's do it.
All right. So Skylar Dyer wanted to jump in. So everybody, right now, this is your chance. Go ahead, ask Jonathan questions based on business, based on leadership, goal setting, any kind of question like that. Get it in there, and we'll try to get it to it. But I have some questions I wanted to ask you myself, but Skylar wanted to jump in real quick. He said, this is one of the best shows you've done, Joe. So thanks, Skylar, for watching. Thanks, Jonathan, for doing that, man.
Appreciate that, Skylar.
And Jamie Green said, hello, gentlemen. So I want to ask you a question because you mentioned it earlier. You talked about the last few months. Can you kind of go into it a little bit more? Like, what have the last few months been like for you what you did with Lumio?
Well, it's, so my one of my very best friends and my partners for 10 years, Rex and Yumi Shade, Rex caught me in the hall of Lumio 4 months ago and he said, hey, what are you going to be doing in 5 years? And I'm like, Rex, I'll be here. He goes, what are you going to be doing in 10 years? I'm like, Rex, it's taken us 10 years to build this. Like, if there's something that we want to do, like doing it through, a multi-billion-dollar company with a nationwide footprint, like any product we want to launch, any service we want to launch, like, why wouldn't I want to do it here now that we built it? So I think it's important to realize, like 4 months ago, I thought I would retire at Lumio at 65, right? I had my dream job, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, on track to take it public in 18 months. Like, I was not going anywhere. So things happen all the time in life that we don't expect, that we don't plan for. Ultimately, there were some things in my background. I had a no-fault settlement from the Washington Attorney General from 2012. When we went to funding, the bankers didn't want that. They didn't want a CEO with that on their background. So there was a moment in time where closing the deal meant if I left the company, the deal would close. And if I stayed with the company, it was looking like the deal wouldn't close. And so really what the last few months have looked like is honestly a lot of heartache. All my best friends work at Lumio, people I love and cared about for years at Smart Energy today, and people I've loved and cared about for the last 18 months at all the other companies. And so, for me, business is relationships, and leaving those relationships behind was very, very difficult. Created a lot of heartache. I'm no stranger to heartache. I've had some big things happen in my life, as most of us have. I think most of us, by the time we're 40, we've experienced at least one really large heartache. And what I have learned is when you're in heartache, it's to not try to recover too quickly, is get okay. Like, don't run from your feelings. Don't try to medicate your feelings or hide your feelings. Like, learn to sit in them. Learn to be okay when you're not okay. Like, it's okay that I'm not okay. Like, it's a life-changing experience. It's a big loss. Like, I wasn't trying to recover right away. I realized, like, hey, this is really sad, and I'm probably going to be sad for a while. And then just using that space, what happens is use that space to learn new things about yourself and people around you, and focus on what you can control. Generally, if you're going through something that's really hard, focusing on other people is a great way to do that. So I was focusing on the needs of my team, and I started focusing on the needs of my family, and realizing that like Hannah and I had made a commitment a few months ago to have a baby, and not knowing how that was going to work with a 100-hour-week schedule. And so I went from 100 hours a week to 0 hours a week. And so, you know, nothing is 100%, you know, right and 100% wrong. Nothing is 100% good or 100% bad. There's an upside to down. And so focus, you know, the perspective that we take away from something happens in our life. Like, none of us control like the big things that happen in our life, and how we tend to internalize them and interpret them will oftentimes influence not just what happens next, but how much joy we can allow ourselves to have even during tough seasons. So the last few months have been focusing on having a new baby with my wife, and focusing on, I started a college for my kids. So all my kids attend college on Mondays. We do an entrepreneur life schools, and we've been teaching them how to invest, and how to trade crypto, and how to balance a budget. And we're all having so much fun from 10 a.m. to 4, 5, 6. And it's just started, you know, it's just like blossomed like all our relationships. So we just had our Christmas here a couple of days ago, and basically it's been everybody's kind of best year ever from a relationship standpoint. And so we're kind of just leaning into that, which is really special.
Well, you mentioned Hannah, and I know you guys are like the power couple, and you know, you really do things together. And you know, can you just talk a little bit about like having a spouse that supports you? You support each other, you know, when you go into business.
Yeah. So I have some thoughts on this, and they're just thoughts, right? So if I say something that totally contradicts with how your great marriage works, I mean, just flush it, right? Because again, there's so many great ways to win, and there's so many great ways to have a successful marriage. But, you know, Hannah and I, you know, we divide up roles in our house. And so I think it's really easy for a woman to support their man if they trust that their man is going to put them first in all things. And so, yeah, Hannah is the most supportive person in the world. It was literally a Friday in January when Greg called me and said, "Hey, I need you to be here Monday full time. This is going really fast. Can you move out here?" And I looked at my wife and I said, "You know, can we move to Utah on Sunday?" And so she had 48 hours. And she did. You know, she moved us, she found us an Airbnb and then a home, and she actually moved like 3 times. And, you know, we sort of divide our roles. You know, my job as the husband is I've volunteered to take on the role of provider and protector. And so, you know, it's my job to make the money and do these other things. And she's taken on the role of CLO, the Chief Love Officer, to make sure our house is always, you know, that the decisions we make are through love. You know, and yeah, we've got a great system. We've got some rules for our marriage that work really good. Always interpret the other person in the best way possible. Trust the other person's word, and everything through love. So if we're doing something and it's not through love, we kind of reevaluate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna take some lessons from you there, man. So we got a comment here. Guy, go ahead, put more questions in. Timothy McGann, he wanted to jump in here and say, embrace the suck and keep moving forward. You're a wealth of knowledge, Jonathan Gibbs. I miss your Monday meetings. Thank you.
Yeah, Tim was a good friend, and we got to know each other a little bit over the last 2 years. So I appreciate that, Tim. Hope you're doing well.
So I just have a question to follow up because I talked about the last few months. Now I want to talk about what you're doing now. What's next for you? What's your plans for this year and the next couple of years?
Yeah. So before, how I've defined success is by being really busy and accomplishing an achievement. And so I'm in the process of redefining what success looks like in my life. Again, I'm not getting on here to coach everybody today. The agreement in the beginning was just to share with you the things that I've been thinking about.
Yep.
And one of those things I've been thinking about is sort of redefining success. And so, being fortunate enough to have a large transaction can kind of take away some of the financial pressures for a little bit, but also I think there's easier ways. So I've always sort of prioritized business first, and Hannah's been wonderful letting us build a family around that business. But now without having a business, I actually feel like this might be my first chance ever in my life to maybe build a life around a better value system, to build a life around my marriage and my family first, and then only look at business opportunities that fit into those. And so that's what we're doing. Not just Hannah and I, but our entire family is deciding what type of family and community we want. And then all of us sort of looking at jobs, business opportunities that fit around that. I've been involved in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin since 2016. And the things that are happening right now has made it easier than ever to make money there, trading and things like that. And so with no employees and with no payroll, no systems, we're able to provide for ourselves trading from home. And so that's probably what we're going to spend the next couple of years on is my first goal for next year is to make sure Hannah has the most amazing pregnant experience ever, because we might only do this one time together. And two, to make sure that all of our kids have an active role in helping raise this child. And so I'm looking for sort of business opportunities that enable me to do that to the best of my ability. And right now that's just, crypto trading, and it's something I've always been passionate about. And I used to trade options on the stock market when I was 22, 23. And so getting back into that has been a lot of fun.
I know you're not giving advice, but for just my own knowledge, I just hear that, Bitcoin is expensive. So let's buy another crypto that's cheaper. You don't give me advice, but just kind of your ideas around that.
All right. So I'll give a really quick summary of really what Bitcoin is and its value, because people are always saying, well, Bitcoin's not backed by anything. Well, the US dollar hasn't been backed by gold since the 70s. So the US currency isn't backed by anything. And it's really why we're experiencing the inflation we're experiencing today, because everything is changing. So let's just take a look at Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is actually the fastest growing division of Amazon. And right now, 15% of the entire internet sits on the back of Amazon Web Services. So like the NFL.com and Netflix, and let's take a look at Netflix. So Amazon has a product called Amazon Prime Video, and its largest competitor is Netflix. But they built such massive infrastructure that it's cheaper for Netflix to host all of their videos on Amazon Web Services than it is to build their own infrastructure. So what Amazon has built is a global infrastructure of data centers that have reliable internet connectivity, reliable electricity, have security services, IT services, and other people are building their businesses on that infrastructure. That's what the mining network is for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has one of the largest, after Amazon, Bitcoin has one of the largest data center infrastructures in the world. And right now, if you look at all of cryptocurrency or every single coin, more than 50% of all the financial transactions are actually tracked on the Bitcoin network versus the 60,000 other coins. The value to Bitcoin, the value that Bitcoin has is that it tracks and monitors all of these transactions. So let me give you a suggestion, an analogy. So if you bank at Wells Fargo or Bank of America, you just need to know that they're hacked every day. And anybody can get into your bank account and move money around. In fact, if they steal your identity and move money around and they wire money to themselves, you can't even collect the $250,000 insurance that your bank has to offer, because it's going to appear as if you yourself moved the money. Here's what you can do for Bitcoin. Let's say you moved Bitcoin off of the offline onto a hard drive. Okay. And you took this hard drive and you put this into a safe in a bank, and the bank burned down and the hard drive was completely destroyed. The Bitcoin network tracks and stores all the transactions since the beginning of time on the Bitcoin network. It could literally see you moving your money to that network and to that hard drive, and it was never moved again. So that 10 years or 20 years later, you could come back and say, hey, I want to transfer the money from this burned hard drive that isn't even connected to the internet. I want to transfer that to my account in Coinbase. And the Bitcoin network would say, do you have your personal key? And they could literally burn on the network. They could burn the money. They could burn the Bitcoin that's on your hard drive, and they could make it reappear in your Coinbase wallet. And they could do that with $1 million. Now they could also do that with $100 million or $1 billion. And please tell me where you could store $1 billion of cash that safely, where even if the device was totally destroyed, if the $1 billion of cash you had was burned up in the fire, how you could recreate it on the financial network? You couldn't. So it's not only the most secure network in the world, it's the largest financial network in the world. It has already won. I used to do Zooms about this in 2017, where the same week JP Morgan was going on CNN and saying Bitcoin's a scam. They were using shell corporations to buy hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin on German exchanges once they got it down really low. The other thing you have to understand is scarcity. So there's only going to be 23 million Bitcoin ever mined. Over 21 million of those are already mined. So once the financial institutions understood that Bitcoin had already passed the point of no return and it was going to be valuable in 2017, and over 90% of the supply was already out there, and there's no way that as a financial institution, they could get it unless they forced other people to sell. Now you understand why the news was so negative from 2017 up until this last year, because the only way JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or billionaires that you don't know could acquire Bitcoin is if they could get the other people who already owned it to sell it. There is no more of it. It's never going to be remade, right? It's the last Bitcoin will be mined in 2150. And there are way more millionaires in the world than there are Bitcoin.
Is there a Bitcoin of NFTs? I know that's totally different things, but is there one NFT? Or like, is that totally something different?
Yeah. So the NFTs. So you have to understand that we've been through this cycle before. So in 2017, the hot thing was an NFT. It was an ICO. So it was an initial coin offering, just like an IPO. And these ICOs, people were buying for 10 cents and selling them for $2 or $5 or $10 in a few weeks or months. And so we've already seen this cycle. What you have to understand is we're so early that we're going to see many boom bust cycles of people that are trying to break into the marketplace because we're so early. We just don't have the same exposure to this in other markets. That is to say, we see Facebook after Sequoia Capital invests in them and takes them public and all these types of things, but you don't see all the companies that Sequoia Capital invested in that failed, or all the companies that the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 investment firms invested in that failed, right? Like we only see the winners. And so what we don't realize is business has a 99% failure rate. These coins will have a far greater than a 99% failure rate. And so will NFTs. And so, for every story of someone that, spent $5,000 on SHIB and sold it for, 500,000, there has to be the same amount of stories of people losing $500,000, investing in the same thing. I mean, that's how the economy works. That's how stocks work. That's how coins work. A lot of these coins right now that have only been around for a few years, They don't have the distribution. They don't have the user base. You can see on CoinMarketCap, it can say, oh, their market cap's $20 billion. But if someone tried to sell $100 million of that today, it would get liquidated to zero. And so there's a lot of artificial value right now. I mean, it's a whole call. I mean, you're talking about, NFTs are going to be like baseball cards and signed helmets and other types of things, right? There are going to be some brands that are going to hold value over time. And there's going to be a lot of fads that become really popular really fast that end up being worth zero, because it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So the question is not, hey, can I buy it today and flip it tomorrow, during a frenzy? The question is, how long will this hold this value for? Will Bored Apes have value when, Louis Vuitton does their NFTs, or, they start doing NFTs with Picasso and this and that? Is someone going to want to pay $20 million for, a pixelated image when they could buy the only NFT of the United States Constitution for $34 million? I mean, that's what we're going to look at.
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you dropping some knowledge on a space that I have know little of. So I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, it's a big, dense category for sure.
Yeah, we could do a whole Zoom call just on that alone, right? There's hours came up so fast. I mean, this is going by so fast, but we have a couple of questions I want to get in from the audience. Get in there, okay? So Facebook user Anonymous here. I believe you said goals are achieved during the mundane.
That's right.
What is your go techniques or ideas you place your mind on to keep yourself moving forward?
So this is important. So every master gem cutter ends their career blind. Every master gem cutter ends their career blind. Right? Because they spend their entire life looking for the smallest defects, the smallest things they can change to improve. And their quest to get better and better and better ends in blindness, because that's how committed to their craft they are. That is a good example of the mundane. There's a learning curve that we can draw, and it's literally, you can see this in sales where people have their best year, their first year, and then they get worse and worse and worse and worse. And the reality is because mastery is doing the same thing over and over and over again with the intentionality of getting better each time. What happens to most of us is when we end up in any job and we're doing the same thing over and over again, we end up getting bored and disinterested in it. And so we actually end up getting worse at that activity instead of better. Where you can see with athletes, they're such conditioned to get better and better when they're in batting practice or pitching practice or whatever it is, right? They're so intentional about the mundane, right? That they can have improvement. So it's really our intentions when we're in that repetitive action. I have a formula that I share with people for skill. And it's this anonymous Facebook user. It's R divided by T equals S, and S equals dollar signs. So it's R divided by T equals S, S equals dollar signs. Repetition divided by time equals skill, skill equals money. Repetition divided by time equals skill, skill equals money. So what does that mean? If I hit 100 golf balls a day, it's 100 divided by time. My time sequence is 1 day, right? I'm going to generate so much skill. But if I were to hit 1,000 golf balls a day or 2,000 golf balls a day, I'm going to get exponentially better. So many times we take something in our fields or the area that we're trying to improve in, and we do something once or twice a day that we could easily be doing 10, 20, or 30 times a day. And so we only get incrementally better. Now, if we do that activity once or twice a day on autopilot without the intentionality of improving in some microscopic way, then the data suggests we actually get worse over time, not better.
I absolutely love that. Do you see, guys, why I love this guy? Always dropping nuggets and training, make it easy to understand, gets motivated every time you talk. And he's just dropping another one. There's another one here, guys. Go ahead. More questions. We have a couple. I think 1 more minute. We might be able to get one more question in. But Skylar Dyer wants to ask a question to you, Jonathan. What have you done to help yourself think bigger than you've ever have and remove that lid in your life of thinking too small? Good question.
Yeah, I think for me, it's exposure. You know, they say that once the brain gets exposed to a concept, it can never compress again. It can never go backwards again. You know, a great example is someone that's lived their whole life, you know, in servitude. Once they become free, they cannot accept servitude again, right? Like freedom becomes the only option once you've tasted it. Same thing with concepts. So what I would say, Skylar, is get yourself exposure to things. A lot of times we sign up for things that we know that we need, right? So like, you know, people in sales take more classes in sales, right? Deliberately exposing yourself to different things has a way of developing your brain versus exposing yourself to more and more content in the same category. So I would say sign up for things, you know, expose yourself, like read some books that you might not organically be attracted to. I kind of did this in a season where I was playing a lot of poker, and I would take my phone and I would hand it around the table and I would tell people to download their favorite song. And so instead of just choosing the same songs over and over and over again and listening to the same things I already knew I would like, I was deliberately exposing myself to different things. Your brain develops this way. For example, if you go to a restaurant and you deliberately order different food, if you drive home deliberately a different way and you do these habits consistently for 30 to 60 days, your brain will naturally start wanting new and different things, and you'll start making different choices.
That's so crazy because exactly how I feel doing these live streams every week. I'm just surrounding myself by different influencers, different perspectives, different knowledge and training, and I'm just soaking it up every week. And you don't even realize it, but you're just soaking all this different knowledge, and it's subconscious almost, right?
That's right. Naturally, when we're 3 and 5 years old, we naturally are inquisitive like this, but we can actually jumpstart our brains to thinking like a 5 and 6 year old by doing these types of things. Skylar, don't underestimate listening to different music and ordering different food. Literally, if you take most people and you take them to the Cheesecake Factory, it has one of the largest menus in the entire restaurant world, and people tend to order the same thing every time they go to cheesecake. So by deliberately making different choices, like driving a different home, like don't underestimate this. Drive a different way home every day and don't use your navigation. You will literally stimulate your brain in a way that will start thirsting for new and different.
I don't know about that. I got to use my GPS, Jonathan. I'm addicted to it now.
I know, but it's the struggle of getting lost and not understanding that actually activates us. They say that most accidents are caused, you know, a few miles from our home. And it's because when we drive the same road over and over again, we actually tune out things. Skylar, I'm going to throw something at you. Do you know that your brain sees its nose every second of every day, but it filters it out? Really? So look down at your nose right now. You can see it.
Oh, yeah.
But all day long, your nose filters it out because it doesn't need to see it. This is how the brain works, right? So when we drive home the same way, our brain knows it. It's on autopilot. It's no different than when you rent a horse. I grew up on a horse ranch in Australia. I would ride wild horses, and then you go and rent a horse in Cabo, and that horse isn't even listening to you. It knows the trail. It does it 100 times. It's on autopilot. So many times in life, our brains, through so much of life, is on autopilot. Our brain makes 70,000 automatic decisions a day, and it makes it through habit. You can literally trick your brain into wanting and thirsting for new things by doing small actions like listening to different music, eating different food, and literally driving home a different route on purpose every day. Because it'll force it to see the nose.
That makes so much sense.
I know, it's crazy.
Facebook user said, I love ordering new stuff. The excitement of finding something new is awesome. And then we got Facebook user said, you get garbage like 10% of the time, but that's a funny experience still.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good
So I'm not going to take too much more of your time, Jonathan. There's one more here. Richard, somebody we both know, Richard Teasdale wanted to jump in. He said, great lessons as always. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Joe. Good to see you guys.
Love you, Richard. Appreciate you, man.
And then Skylar Jonathan said, see the nose. See, now you can remember that.
That's it. It's once you realize that your brain is literally filtering out the image of your nose all day long, you realize that you can harness that for good and a lot of things.
Especially my nose. Like I should be able to see my nose really well. And I can't.
James Woods, love you too, buddy. Appreciate you. Merry Christmas and congratulations on getting married. Finding the right person to spend your rest of the life to is the most wonderful thing in the world. So
congratulations.
Looking forward to celebrating with you guys.
Yeah, love it. And Jonathan, I want to ask you just one more thing before you go. Any last thoughts? Anything you want anybody wants to reach out to you? Can they? Leave your last thoughts you want to the audience.
Yeah, you could post my number or something in the chat. I mean, I'm happy to. We're also on Facebook together, so probably anybody here can just reach out and connect me on Facebook. Happy to spend time with people, follow up questions. I do have a non-compete with Lumio. So if you call me and ask me for like solar specific information, I'll have to politely decline. Not necessarily my preference. I'm always kind of I don't really think about competitors that way, but I want to honor the agreement that I signed. Lumio has been very good to me. And so I want to honor their request to not compete for the next year and a half or so. And so I won't be responding to requests on solar sales, solar operations, specific things. But if you have some generic things that you would consider like life coaching or life tips, I'd be more than happy to contribute any way I can.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And like I said, you didn't have to do this. You came on and you gave so much value to our audience. And I can speak for the audience. They all appreciate it. I know what they like. And I see what you're bringing, man. So again, Jonathan, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, Joe. Well, I hope your audience feels the same way about you. I've watched you run these for a year. I think it's really important to understand that Joe's not compensated for this in any way. He wanted
neither is Jonathan either. So
he wanted to create value for his peer group. He started, learning things that he thought were useful, and he wanted to share the things that he was learning with the community. And I think that's a great spirit. So I'm happy to participate on your program. And if this isn't what you choose to do next year, we all look forward to seeing what you do tend to apply your talents to next year. So I think it'll be great.
Stay in touch, man. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Talk to you later.
See ya.
And guys, before I go, this is the last episode of the Solar Objections live stream. We're going to be taking a break. And I want to just thank all the guests that came on from the first one: Ahmad Salama, Donnie Kinzer, Glenn Myers, Melissa Dawson, John Bernasso, Michael O'Donnell, Kenny Perry, Christy Bangu, Jake Hess, Nathan Skousen, Everett Brewer, Ben Heffron, Danny Pesci. I can keep going on. James Ramos. And I just want to say from the heart, thank you all for being on the show. I really appreciate it. The audience really appreciated it. If I missed anybody, I couldn't get all 80 guests on there, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. We are out. Happy holidays. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's talk soon. We are out.